Hi, this is Silverlining. I'm a DJ and producer from London, and I'm here on the Random Rave project. Um, I mean, for me, it has to be the 80s. I think from actually 79 till 84, that period of disco, and then the proto house, and then house itself, obviously, techno. And I think that's kind of, that's laid the foundations for everything that's followed for the next 30 years. So it's I'm firmly an 80s boy, really, in that respect. Sure. I mean, there are plenty of youngsters who come to gigs in all kinds of places, and somehow they find it, whether through friends or siblings or even parents, or just the internet. There are people who just from a young age look for something alternative. But as you say, it's not this EDM side of things. I'm not sure how long you can go on liking that, to be honest. So at some point, people are going to hear something that sounds similar to that, but it's slightly better, and then they might hear something that's slightly better than what they've heard before, and then they might discover, more interesting music, which is all subjective from our point of view, of course. But it's often the case that people who discover commercial music do end up, going into more underground tastes. It's hard to tell how things will stand the test of time, really. There's definitely a lot of music coming out, but you've got to remember also, in the 90s, for example, when I first started releasing stuff, there was loads of music coming out on vinyl, and we often forget that for all the good stuff that we remember from back then, there's plenty of stuff that just ends up in basements somewhere that will never be listened to again. So at the end of the day, it's all about creating something honest and pure from the heart, and at some point somebody's going to find that. It's going to become their little secret weapon, their little gem. That's when it stops being just your thing. It starts being kind of property for other people too, and they're going to play it. They're going to play it to their friends or to their audiences. And if you do a few of those and they get out there, then and people will notice. But what stands the test of time is something that none of us can tell, because I know that I remember trying to make tracks that would stand the test of time back in the 90s, but the ones I did really quickly are the ones that people like the most. So it's I think it's all about what comes from the heart. I mean, I don't think the illegal parties ever really went away. They've always been there in London, whether it's in the forests, from the 90s to 2000s, warehouses, studios and whatnot. And then, say, around the 2010s, there was like a new generation doing it. And to a large extent, the people who started that new scene, say in Hackney Wick or Peckham, just talking about London, they did a really good job of doing it in a responsible way. So it's always been there, and you can see that those people are now being quite careful about doing this in a responsible way. But then a lot of people jumped on the bandwagon and towards over the last 2-3 years and started doing these events where they were not so conscious of people's safety and various other issues as well. For sure, I think everything is going to be a lot more homegrown, as you say. Some venues have sent out mails saying that we are going to be focusing on homegrown talent, in the foreseeable future. So I think it's a good leveler for the scene, in a way that some new artists can come up, or some artists who don't get to play as much locally can get a chance to play a bit more on their own turf. So I think that's definitely not a bad thing. I think the huge lineups, the thousands of people, I mean, nobody really wants to go to a socially distanced festival with all those tables and chairs with 2 meter spaces between them. It doesn't really feel quite right. So I think those kind of massive lineups are definitely going to be on hold for a little bit. Again, if you focus on your own sound and you do it with love, and you really hone in on your own sound, then people will notice it. There is space in the scene for people to grow just purely on music. Obviously, there is this other paradigm where it's all about social media and image and blah blah. I still think there are artists who break through, young artists, older artists who are breaking through purely on the music, and there are people who look for those those qualities rather than the more superficial ones. So it just depends on what you're going for, really. So if you want you want millions of followers and you want the festival gigs, then probably not. But if you just want to just put out music that you love and connect with people through music, you are gonna do that. I think it's definitely evolved. I mean, when I first started, I didn't really have anything in mind other than just making a few tunes, and I was quite surprised to see other people liking it. So, you did it, you just carried on doing it. And then there's a point where, say you start a family and your priorities change, and you have to think about it in terms of like supporting a family, for example, and being more responsible. So then, around 2000s, you start to think, okay, I need to be a bit more professional and planning things out. But then I started to learn that by doing that, people notice that you are trying to do that in an almost subconscious way. And that's also around the time when everything kind of just crashed into the MP3 thing. And then around the 2000s, I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to do what I love, and if people like it, they will latch onto it. And thankfully, a few people have liked it, and that's my ethos now, is just to only do what I like. And you won't please everyone all the time, but at the same time, you hopefully will get some people that you connect with. I would say that period after 9/11, when things kind of change in terms of society, and then the digital thing first came around. I'm not anti-digital or anything, but when that basically brought about the end of file sharing, brought about the end of the vinyl industry temporarily. Everyone was in a limbo. We were just making digital files instead of making records, and it wasn't quite the same, I have to say. So we were kind of paddling along, trying to sort of emulate something that wasn't really there anymore. So that was a bit of a downer. And obviously this year has been a bit of a it's definitely turned things upside down in terms of events. But we'll see. The music's still there. The music hasn't died. Maybe the parties are off for a while, but the music hasn't died. So we can still get on with other things as well at the same time. I think going back to some of these earlier points, I think just by enjoying it, you have to enjoy it. And as soon as you start treating it creatively as a business, then that can be a bit of a vibe killer. You do have to just make sure that you enjoy those moments in the studio. I mean, if outside of that, if you need to be kind of level-headed and not irresponsible business-wise, then that's another thing. But in terms of just the creative side of it, you have to just enjoy it. And other than that, and just try not to overdo it. Long studio sessions, and make sure you exercise, have a good diet, blah blah blah. Don't burn yourself out. Just kind of have a normal life, reasonable life, family, friends in between. It's pretty simple, really, I think. I've seen all sorts. I don't know, because I'm sure there might be kids listening and people having their breakfast. But I suppose I've seen the Prime Minister of a certain Balkan country dancing around and taking off his suit in front of me. I've seen people waving weapons around and someone making a download on the dance floor. That did occur, although I didn't see it, thankfully. Hopefully it wasn't in response to my set, but who knows. I'm Silverlining. Thank you so much for watching the RRP. Take care.